What's going on, y'all? It's me, Jace, and we are back on the YouTube with our first mock draft for 2022. Now, usually I try to start it at the beginning of April, but vacation happened, and then the NFL was turned upside down with all these trades and things like that. So I've had mock drafts done that just never got the opportunity to be uploaded because something changed. And as this will be uploaded, the news will be hitting about Kelvin Joseph, the Cowboys second round pick from last year, which could eventually impact what happens later on, or in the next 2 weeks, going into the draft, if something does, something more is made of it. So, but we're going to jump into it. So much like last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be on the clock, and they hit last year with their quarterback, I believe. It was a rookie quarterback on a really bad football team. So, I think when you sit down and you watch the tape, you can see things in Trevor Lawrence that you're like, okay, yeah, he's the franchise quarterback. And so there's no debate about that. But the Jaguars do have the first pick. And then, of course, the rest of the terrible teams, the Lions, the Texans, the Jets, and, then we get down to in the mid-20s, the Steelers, who possibly need a quarterback, the Patriots, who could use some skilled players, the Cowboys, offensive line issues, Buffalo corner issues. So we're going to have fun jumping into this. So I haven't said the 4 rounds because that's what I've been doing for all my mock drafts so far, but we're only going to do one round today. So I'm going to select all for all teams. We usually use the Draft Network, but I want to try something a little bit different. I started kind of maneuvering around with the Draft Network and Mock Draft Database, which is a really good website if you really want to get into mock drafts, and Pro Football Network and FanSpeak and things like that. But I really settled on the Draft Network this year just because I like the interface and how smooth it is. So we're going to jump into it. So with the first pick in the 2022 Mock Draft 1.0, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to select Aidan Hutchinson, defensive end out of Michigan, a violent rusher who will make his money with his hand in the dirt, in my opinion. He can be a double-digit sack guy. Jacksonville tagged Cam Robinson, and Walker Little is going into his second season. So I don't really see them taking Evan Neal. I would take Evan Neal just because it's an offensive tackle, and it's an offensive tackle. You can always use an offensive tackle, but they are going to go defensive end here and take the best edge rusher, in my opinion. So with the second pick, the Detroit Lions, the Lions stink, respectfully, so they can literally take any position and be happy. But in all seriousness, Brad Holmes had a great draft last year, hitting on Penei Sewell and Aleem McNeil and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they are adamant about building the trenches. And so for me, I'm definitely looking, I'm not looking at offensive tackle, although all of the top 3 or 4 or 5 tackles are there. I am looking more so at edge rusher, much like you did with Penei Sewell, build those trenches. And so for me, I know that this player has some character concerns and things like that, but in his last 18 games, he had 12 sacks, 15 quarterback hits, and 55 hurries. So, I have to take Kayvon Thibodeau here. And I think Kayvon Thibodeau, a guy with that kind of personality, he needs a Dan Campbell type coach who's a football guy only. And Kayvon Thibodeau is about the brand. And so I think that would be a perfect situation for him to really balance it out and to become a well-rounded football player. So I have the Lions taking Kayvon Thibodeau, just taking the best player available. It's kind of going to be the what's going to happen in these first 5 or 6 picks. So the Houston Texans are going to be on the clock here, and much like the Lions, the Texans are very far away from winning. And I know a lot of players are tempting here, especially a guy like Kyle Hamilton, but much like the Lions, they need to build their trenches. I think that's how you build a football team. You build from the trenches and back. You need to protect Davis Mills. He was not a bad quarterback last year for you. And I think you need to put some money into the offensive line and keep him upright. So your 2 offensive tackles, at this point, if we were to take an offensive tackle, would be Laramie Tunsil and Evan Neal. That's solid. Those are two bookend tackles. Usually it would just be, oh, well, we can just get a left tackle. He can be great, but the right tackle don't have to be that good. No, your right tackle needs to be that good because it's more than one guy rushing off the edge who can get double-digit sacks for teams. So you want to get a good right tackle as well. And so for me, my tackle rankings would look a little bit different than Pro Football Focus's. I would actually have this flip with Ikem Ekwonu at 1, Evan Neal at 2, and Charles Cross at 3. But I'm actually going to go ahead and take Evan Neal because I have to think like these teams will. And I think that the Lions and Nick Caserio will definitely look more towards the bigger school, the Alabama, the SEC for the offensive tackle, and not necessarily the ACC. So I'll go ahead and give the Houston Texans Evan Neal. So now here's where it gets fun, right? The New York Jets. The Jets need pass catchers, they need a pass catcher because Elijah Moore was a really good player last year. They need a pass catcher, and they also need a linebacker and they need a corner. This is just one of those BPA situations where when you look at the corners, I think it's a little bit too early for corners, in my opinion. Not top 4, but I do think for the Jets, you're in a division with Mac Jones and Josh Allen. So specifically Josh Allen, and then you also have Tua in the division as well, who they've added a bunch of weapons to. You have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill down there. I think you have to get a lockdown corner. And if I would have done this mock draft at this time last season, I probably would have given the Jets Derek Stingley Jr. But I'm not. I'm giving the Jets Ahmad Sauce Gardner. Sauce is such a good prospect, right? Because I'm going to pull his measurables up here. Sauce stands 6'3" and is 190. But I love bigger corners. I get the 5'10", the Trent McDuffie type corner, but it's it's something about that 6'3" corner that can just bully you at the line of scrimmage that I love. So that's why I love Nahshon Wright coming out of Oregon State last year, who got drafted by Dallas in the top 100. Because he's just a massive corner. Him and Israel Mukwamu and all those. I love those kinds of players. Sometimes they don't work out, but I love bigger corners. So, but Sauce allowed no touchdowns in college. He can handle any kind of receiver. The Jets aren't good at corner. They did add Jordan Whitehead in the secondary, and I think you continue to retool that with those quarterbacks and those weapons in that division that you have to go against. So you add Sauce with Jordan Whitehead, and you could potentially be sitting on something really good as you go into the season. So I'll go ahead and give them Sauce Gardner here. The Giants, the funny thing about the Giants is this, right? So if you scroll up here, you look at the Texans, right? It says every position. That could kind of apply to the Giants because, for the Giants are interesting, right? Because the Giants, Andrew Thomas has been okay, right? He's actually been really good. But Sam or James Bradbury's cap hit is massive. How are they looking in the secondary? How do they look at linebacker? I was trying to give them Micah Parsons last season or last mock draft because they needed a linebacker and they never really upgraded that position, but they did hit on Azeez Ojulari. So I think for the Giants, it's literally every position as well. And much like the other teams, you got to get offensive linemen. As I said, Ikem Ekwonu is the best offensive lineman in this entire draft. Some people are just bigger and stronger than you, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's Ikem. Just a powerful human. He does have guard experience as well. He could slide in at left guard for the Giants or kick him out at right tackle to replace Matt Pert. So I'm going to go ahead and give them Ikem Ekwonu, the tackle out of North Carolina State. So here's where it's going to get fun, right? Because everybody loves quarterbacks, but nobody loves quarterbacks more than David Tepper. They are desperate for a quarterback. And David Tepper is, because I don't know how much longer Matt Rule is going to be there with that 10-23 record. And I think if they had the opportunity to go back, I think they would take Justin Fields. And it's not to say that J.C. Horn's a bad player because he got injured, but he had he was a good player when he was healthy. But you could have had Justin Fields and then potentially landed on a Trent McDuffie or Roger McCreary and still got your corner the next year. So I think if they could go back and redo it, they would. But David Tepper wants a quarterback badly, and I think where he's going to go is he's going to go to a place where he's comfortable, right? And for me, knowing his connections to Pittsburgh, it's much like I mentioned with the Pagulas in my mock draft last year, how people have ties to different players based on where they're from or where they made their money or where they had their hedge fund and things like that. So I look deeply into that and connections, and just knowing that Matt Rule really enjoyed Pickett's pro day and David Tepper likes him. I feel really good about this one. I think that the Carolina Panthers here are going to go quarterback, and they're going to take Kenny Pickett. So I don't believe Kenny Pickett is the best quarterback in this class, but I do believe he's a very talented player. And the only thing working against Kenny Pickett is his hand size. But outside of that, he's going to be the first quarterback taken. So the Giants are here at 7. And I mentioned that they hit on Trevon Walker. They hit on, I just pulled the pick. They hit on Azeez Ojulari, and I think that they're going to go ahead and draft Trevon Walker here. You have to continue to build in the trenches, and that's something that you're going to hear me say a lot as we go throughout the rest of this mock draft. But if you can protect the quarterback and rush the quarterback, you can do a lot of great things, right? You hit on Azeez Ojulari in the second round. He had 7-8 sacks. That's a good rusher. But Trevon Walker can be a great rusher. I'm not saying he is. My issue with Trevon Walker is when I watch the tape, I just see an athlete. I don't see a dominant edge rusher. I don't see a Myles Garrett. I don't see, even when it comes to production, like I don't see a guy like a George Karlaftis, where George Karlaftis is a guy that's like, no, I'm going to get my hands up. I'm going to spin. I'm going to do, he's always trying to do something. Where Trevon Walker is just a guy that's really, really athletic. And you're going to notice me say that when I talk about all these Georgia players in the draft, they're just athletic, but I don't see a guy that's being mocked at number 1 and number 2 by Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler and all these guys with connections to the league. I just don't see it. I don't. He's tempting because of the traits. He can move inside as well at 3-tech and rush as well and have success there, but you're betting on athletic traits, and who knows? He may blossom into a great edge rusher, but right now I do not see a guy that is going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. I'm sorry. I just don't. I know he's a top 10 pick, but I don't see that kind of guy. So I'm going to go ahead and give the Giants Trevon Walker. The Falcons are on the clock. They need everything. But they really need a receiver. Atlanta blew their team up, traded Matt Ryan to Indy. They did snag Kyle Pitts last year, who ended up with the most yards by a tight end in the modern era. So that's good, but you can't go into the season with Olamide Zaccheaus and Damiere Byrd as your receivers. No disrespect, but you don't have a number 1 receiver. You have a very good tight end, but you don't have a game-changing wideout. And so for me, I think if you're the Falcons, you're definitely looking at receiver. And receiver this year is all about your flavor. What do you want? Do you want a guy that can go over you? Then that's Treylon Burks and Drake London. You want a guy who can outrun you? That's Jameson Williams. You want a guy that can break tackles? That's Sky Moore. So it's a lot of different receivers. But I think for Atlanta and what they want to do with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, I'm going Garrett Wilson. I just think he is more of an electric player with catching the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and he don't really break tackles, but he's really good in space, and I think that's what you need for Atlanta. So we'll go ahead and give them Garrett Wilson. Number 9 is going to be Seattle. Seattle traded Russell Wilson to the Broncos. And that's how they got this pick. Seattle needs a quarterback, and I think they need a big arm quarterback who can brave those elements, get the ball down the field to guys like DK and Tyler Lockett. Drew Lock is in the final year of his deal, and I think Drew Lock is a serviceable quarterback in the National Football League. I don't think he's a starter whatsoever. I think you have to draft a quarterback here, and for me, I'm going with my number one quarterback here. I just think that Seattle loves to get the ball down the field, and the best guy with the strongest arm in this draft is Malik Willis. And I'm going to give Malik Willis to Seattle. The thing about Malik Willis, though, that I really want to caution Seahawks fans about is Malik's going to take a lot of sacks as a rookie. A lot. One, because your offensive line's bad. And two, he didn't really do that well with pressure in college, right? He's athletic, so he can maneuver in the pocket, but when all hell breaks loose, sometimes he goes down. And it's kind of what I said about Justin Fields last year, where I said he was going to have an issue in the league with interceptions, and he threw 10, right? So he threw double-digit interceptions. So it's going to be some growing pains, but I definitely think that he is a very good quarterback who could thrive in a Seattle offense with those two receivers. So I picked 10, the Jets. So the Jets got their corner with Sauce Gardner, but you still have to continue to build around a guy like Zach Wilson, right? So for me, Charles Cross is a tempting pick here because you really don't know about Mekhi Becton, right? If Mekhi Becton can stay healthy, then you don't need a Charles Cross, right? So me personally, I'm banking on Mekhi Becton keeping his weight under control and staying healthy. So for that reason, I'm going to pass on Charles Cross, and I'm going to take a receiver. Now, this would be Jameson Williams, but Jameson tore his ACL, right? So I don't believe Jameson Williams is going to go top 10 on an ACL tear. I just don't, right? But I do believe the Jets are going to take Drake London. He's a monster when it comes to back shoulder fades. He does a good job of selling routes and using his size to box out corners. The only issue is he had 8 drops in 2021, which can become a problem, much like Christian Watson will probably go in the second round as well, with a lot of drops. But he's a first-round player, he being Drake London. Pair that up with Elijah Moore, and you have two different receivers, who can thrive at what they do. If Denzel Mims can get it together, they could be a good trio, but I guess we'll see. But I think for the Jets, you need to go ahead and continue to add pieces around Zach Wilson, and Drake London is definitely a very good piece to add. So the Washington Commanders, that's their name now. It says they need a quarterback, but they acquired Carson Wentz, and I really thought Carson Wentz is going to thrive in Indy, and I was just way off. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, I guess. Where he's getting pushed back in the end zone, he just throws it up, it gets intercepted with a minute to go in the game, and it was already tied. It's like, dude, come on, stop. Carson Wentz is going to be Carson Wentz, right? But for me, I think the Commanders have a bigger issue on their hands that no one seems to be talking about. So Kyle Hamilton is tempting here, because you want to replace Landon Collins, but the Commanders got to get some receivers. They have procrastinated on Terry McLaurin's deal, and that will make him a free agent next year. I'm going to go ahead and give them a receiver here, a specific one. I'm going to give them Chris Olave, right? Because Chris Olave was a touchdown machine at Ohio State. 12 or more TDs in 2 seasons, or in 2 of his seasons. 4.39 makes him a legit deep threat as well. You have insurance just in case you don't want to pay Terry McLaurin money. And the fact that you procrastinated on this makes me feel like you don't want to pay Terry McLaurin. And you procrastinating is only raising the price, right? It's why I look at like the Ravens. I talked about it last year with Eric DaCosta. Like, you can use as many metaphors and phrases you want. Like, eventually you're gonna have to pay Lamar Jackson. You procrastinating on paying Lamar Jackson is only raising the price. So get the deal done. Washington procrastinated on paying Terry McLaurin, and now they're gonna have to pay him $20 million a year. Yes, $20 million a year. If DJ Moore can get 20 a year, so can Terry, because their numbers are very comparable, and Terry's played in less games. So go ahead and give the Commanders Chris Olave. The Vikings. Even before Patrick Peterson returned, I was mocking a corner to Minnesota. Minnesota's missed. They missed on Mike Hughes, but you're still in a division with Aaron Rodgers, and you have to get better. Like, you have a new coach. You gotta get better on defense. Danielle Hunter, he's back, but he's making a lot of money. Harrison Smith is aging, and they paid him a massive contract for I don't know what reason with his age, but you got to continue to get younger on defense. You're fine on offense with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook, and you have plenty of weapons. You got to get better on defense. And for me, Kyle Hamilton is, again, tempting, and he's having a little bit of a slide here, but that's going to stop very soon. But he's tempting here, but you paid Harrison Smith. So we are actually going to give the Minnesota Vikings Derek Stingley Jr. So Derek Stingley Jr. is going to go to Minnesota, and the Houston Texans are going to be on the clock here, and they're going to actually select Kyle Hamilton. Some people are just bad test takers. His stock has fallen, because of the way he tested, but he has football speed. I mean, I've seen the man go from the far side of the field, flip his hips, get his eyes on the football, and intercept it on the opposite side of the field. He comes down and makes tackles as well. I think he can thrive as your free safety. But he can also come down and play strong safety, play linebacker, erase steals tight ends. He can do all that. I think he's a weapon in the secondary. He's just a bad test taker. Much like Derek Stingley Jr., if I did this mock draft last year, he'd probably be a top 5 pick. So I'm going to give the Texans Kyle Hamilton, and they're just going to have somebody that can patrol their secondary, and he's going to be a very good player in that division. So that's just taking best player available. So at 14, the Baltimore Ravens are going to be on the clock here. Jordan Davis is tempting here, just to get a big nose tackle who can just fill space and stop the run. But they did bring back Michael Pierce, so you don't need a Jordan Davis type here. Calais Campbell's production is dipping, and Justin Madubuike hasn't really blossomed into what we expected him to be. So I'm looking to add on the defense here. I think Devontae Wyatt is the best interior defensive lineman in the draft. He does project more as a 3 tech and a 4-3, but I definitely think he can play 5 tech as well in a 3-4. So that'll be his bread and butter in this defense here. But I'm going to go ahead and give the Baltimore Ravens Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle out of Georgia. So another guy, super athletic, but on tape, he shows up. So I'll give him that. At 15, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock. This is the pick that came from the Miami Dolphins. And you see their needs: linebacker, defensive back. Easy. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to take a corner here. So we're going to look at our cornerback depth chart, our cornerback rankings. Trent McDuffie, Andrew Booth Jr., who's a sticky man corner. Kyer Elam, don't really have good ball skills for me. Dax Hill, I project him more of a slot. Roger McCreary, a very good man corner. Kyler Gordon, who could go in the first round. I've heard he could possibly go in the first round. He's been invited to the draft as well. I don't see a first round corner, but it's all about opinion. So the Eagles are going to select the top corner on the board, which is going to be Trent McDuffie, who's an athletic cornerback. I watched his Oregon State tape, and I saw I love players that hustle, right? And just running from the opposite side of the field on an end around to make the tackle behind the line, just outran everyone on the field. He can play inside and outside, has the hips and the speed to open up and follow wide receivers on digs and overs and deep routes. And he's a smaller corner, but you can see his ability. He's a technician. The size could hurt him against bigger receivers, but he's so technically sound that I think he'll be able to survive. So the Philadelphia Eagles are going to select Trent McDuffie and shore up their secondary there. So at 16, the Saints are on the clock with the trade, via Philly, which is via Indianapolis. So the Saints are entering the season with a new coach, carrying all the damage from the old coach. Sean Payton ruined this team, respectfully. Like, just gutted the salary, just ruined the salary cap. Players are injured, bad contracts. Like, just, it's a mess to clean up. But the Saints need skill players. They re-signed Jameis Winston, and Alvin Kamara isn't getting any younger. Michael Thomas can't stay healthy. And I think for them, it's time to get an explosive weapon, someone with track speed. I know that Jamison Williams, got injured towards ACL, but I don't care. It's an ACL. You can recover from an ACL. That's a common injury. When healthy, he's the number one receiver. I believe that if he was healthy right now, he would be the number one receiver taken easily. So I think for the Saints, getting him at 16 is actually somewhat of a steal. And I think just adding that to their, to their playbook will definitely help them out. So at 17, the Los Angeles Chargers are on the clock here. And the goal when you have a quarterback is to keep him upright. You drafted Rashawn Slater last year, who was second-team All-Pro and All-Rookie. He was great. He's a very good player. It's time to solidify the other end of the line, and I think Charles Cross here, he's not really a road grader in the run game. Had inconsistent technique in 2020, but really improved in 2021. His athleticism makes up for his deficiencies, and he's phenomenal with his hands and the ability to move in space. He projects as a franchise tackle, in my opinion. Now, realistically, like this mock here, spoiler alert, it's not going to have any trades because it's the first one, right? If Charles Cross is not falling out of the top 10. It's not going to happen because eventually someone's going to move up to get Charles Cross, right? He's a franchise tackle, right? But for the sake of this draft with no trades, he's going to fall out of the top 15 because this is just where I see him slotted. So Charles Cross is going to go to the Los Angeles Chargers. At pick 18, the Philadelphia Eagles, they are going to get their linebacker here. Their inside linebacker. They have this ranked properly because Devin Lloyd is a better player than Nakobe Dean personally. So Devin Lloyd is going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a rangy player who can fill space and is a sure tackler. He can rush up the middle as well. Team captain as well. So he's a leader and he's the quarterback of the defense. Really improved in 2021 against the run. Just asked Travis Dye from Oregon. He got hit so hard he transferred to USC. That's how hard he hit him. So it's not true, but he did transfer. But Philly adds to the middle of their defense and they prosper. You're in a division with the guys like Antonio Gibson and CeeDee Lamb who loves to go across the middle. Like you have to get better in the middle of your defense. And so you got better at corner and you're going to get better at linebacker. So Devin Lloyd is going to be a Philadelphia Eagle. So at pick 19, the Saints are going to be on the clock here. And one of the bigger needs for the Saints, in my opinion, is offensive tackle. And so we're going to check out our offensive tackle rankings here. And Bernard Raymond is there. So is Trevor Penning and Abraham Lucas. But we're going to give the Saints Trevor Penning because of his position flex. He can line up at guard and center. Quick get off, especially at guard. Can hold his own in the run game as well. And that's why I really project him more as a guard in the league. I want him running over people. He can get out in space and move. Now, in 2019, he did struggle a little bit with power rushers, and his footwork can be inconsistent at times. But he really grew each year as a starter. And with Andrew Speed being IR due to the pec injury during the season and James Hurst having a movable contract, I just think the Saints are going to hit on Trevor Penning and have a very flexible offensive lineman that'll really help them out. So at pick 20, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do I really have to explain Like you signed Mitch Trubisky, and I've always been the person to say that, okay, well, maybe this person couldn't have success in this situation, right? So let's try them here. If you stink in another location, then maybe you just stink, right? I think for the Steelers, though, you're gonna have really your pick of the litter here. For me, I would probably go Matt Corral, but I know that Pittsburgh's probably just gonna take Desmond Ridder. And that's okay. Desmond Ridder is a very solid player. He's almost like a mix of like Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett, but he played at Cincinnati. But they had a lot of success, and I think for Pittsburgh, you want to get a solid passer. That's what you need. You need a passer, right? Ben Roethlisberger's arm was spaghetti. Mitch Trubisky ain't out throwing nobody. He probably can't outthrow me, respectfully. He don't have a big arm. But Desmond Ridder is a very fluid passer, and I think that's what the Steelers need to get the ball out to guys like Deontay Johnson. So Desmond Ridder is going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So at pick 21, the New England Patriots are on the clock here, and the Patriots are going to select a receiver. They're going to select Treylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas. At 6'2", 225, he ran a 4.5 40. When I look at him, or what I want you to think when you look at him, I want you to think Juju Smith-Schuster, like almost identical in workouts, just with 40 times in height and weight. Like that's the kind of receiver that you're getting. He's got a lot of catches across the middle, and that's why he averaged the most yak per reception in college football. Also has experience in the backfield. He can take advantage of a mismatch. He can be incredible in this offense. I think for Mac Jones, one of the things that really hurt Mac Jones was Mac Jones ain't Tom Brady, which means Tom Brady ain't going to take Julian Edelman and some other 6th-round receivers and win the Super Bowl, right? That's not how it's going to work with Mac Jones. You got to add some weapons. You have to. And so Treylon Burks is definitely going to be the pick here to give Mac Jones some more weapons. If you want to continue to have success, you made the playoffs, so imagine what your team could look like if you gave Mac Jones some help, so Treylon Burks, who could, in my opinion, Treylon Burks could go top 15, because these receivers are about your flavor, how you want to do it. So he could go top 15. The Packers are going to be on the clock here, and they did trade away Devontae Adams, paid Aaron Rodgers a lot of money. They offered Devontae Adams the same money he got from Las Vegas, and he was like, nah, I want to go to Vegas. Because respectfully, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, you want to go to Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is very fun, and it does not snow like it does in Green Bay. So I would give the Packers Treylon Burks if he was available, but he's not. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take the best player, which is George Karlaftis. So Karlaftis is explosive off the edge. Don't reach if you're an OT. Don't overextend because you're going to lose. You're done if you do against this guy. He has smaller arms, and he isn't really athletic. Kind of like DeMarvin Leal, who's going to go in the second round, who's a defensive tackle from Texas A&M. He can get stonewalled at time like DeMarvin Leal, but Karlaftis is a first-round player because when he gets stonewalled, like I mentioned before, he is always trying to affect the game. He's trying to get his hands up. He's trying to affect throwing lanes. He's trying to shed blood. He is. I think I listened to someone's draft show, like an NFL team, and they were saying like he reminds him of Ryan Kerrigan, and it's the perfect comp because Ryan Kerrigan was always in the way if you ever watched him play. Like he's just everywhere, and that's what George Karlaftis is, and I think that's a really good pick for Green Bay. I think you have to sit tight if you're Gutekunst and just not panic, right? Don't. Oh, we have to take a receiver here. No, you don't. Just take the best player. You're gonna be okay. You have Aaron Rodgers, so you're gonna be fine. So the Cardinals are on the clock here at pick 23, and we're going to go ahead and give the Arizona Cardinals Zion Johnson, guard or tackle, whatever you want him to play, out of Boston College. He came in at 6'2", 312 at the combine. He has position flex, like I said. His hands are never out of place. He doesn't overextend. He does it against good talent, too. He had Brian Breesy in the gulag. Brian Breesy is going to be a top 10 pick when he comes out of Clemson. Probably next year. But he was bodying this dude. He has great technique and he excels as the pass blocker. His natural spot is guard, in my opinion. He's plug and play day one at guard. Or if you want to move him out to right tackle or left tackle, he could have success there because he's played every position. And he's trying to learn how to play center as well. So we're going to go ahead and give them Zion Johnson. The Cardinals' offensive line is aging. And I think you can definitely upgrade that guard position. So, pick 24, the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock here. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, hell, this could be a corner if we find out Kelvin Joseph, was the shooter. Rest in peace to the kid that was murdered. But if we find out that Kelvin Joseph was the shooter, then would Dallas eventually be looking at a corner, especially with Anthony Brown's deal and things like that. So we could be having a different conversation next mock draft, about a Andrew Booth Jr. or a Daxton Hill or Roger McCreary or Kyler Gordon. So, but I don't think that's where Dallas is going. Dallas is definitely going to look at their interior offensive line, and Tyler Linderbaum is a very tempting player, but Dallas has a center on the roster. They don't have a guard at all. It's just a big hole at guard after losing Connor Williams. You played Connor McGovern last year, and I don't think he's an NFL player. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt last year, and I saw him play, and I was just like, yeah, that's a third-round miss, and you're going to have to chalk it up as that because he's not an NFL starter. So for Dallas, I'm going to go ahead and give them Kenyon Green, who's just a violent offensive lineman. He plays with just power. Just my goodness, if his hands are on you, you're done. He's gonna launch you around. He's gonna throw you across the field. But with that comes some penalties, which is an issue Dallas' offensive line struggled with last year. So hopefully they can clean that up. But much like Zion Johnson, just to flex at different positions will definitely help, especially in Dallas with different kinds of injuries that happen on the offensive line. So Kenyon Green is going to be the pick here for Dallas. So at 25, you're going to have Buffalo. Buffalo's on the clock here, and Buffalo is going to take a corner to pair it with Tre'Davious White. As I said, you have your pick, your pick of the litter here. Really, I would kind of stop here, Martin Emerson, but I think he's more of a late two. But really, any of these guys could go in the first round here to Buffalo. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and get the Buffalo Bills, Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. The UVA game where he had the one-handed interception in the end zone, just ridiculous. But multiple passes defended, tackles. He's a willing tackler. He goes low, obviously because he's a corner, and sometimes that causes him to whiff. But more times than not, he's going to get you on the ground. He's a very solid football player. Andrew Booth Jr. was the first player I watched while getting ready for the draft, right? And I was watching him, and I was like, yo, he's really good. Just going in, just watching games and seeing guys like Sauce and Derek Stingley and Trent McDuffie. I'm watching Andrew Booth Jr. I'm like, yo, he's a first round player in my opinion. So he's going to go to Buffalo here at pick 25, and Tennessee's going to be on the clock next. Tennessee, they hit on Jeffrey Simmons. They drafted him when he had an ACL tear and some off the field issues that, were resolved or whatever, but they did hit on Jeffrey Simmons. But I think what you need in Tennessee is a space eater, right? You should go for Jordan Davis, in my opinion. 6'6", 341, he projects as a nose tackle in a 3-4, or one tech in a 4-3. Again, same thing. They just eat up space and don't really rush the passer. And that causes him to be a 2-down player, which is why I believe he slid this late. I really believe he could slide out of the first round. People get wrapped up in the testing, as I mentioned with Kyle Hamilton, and they get too wrapped up in testing, whether it's good or whether it's bad. and at the same time, it's like, I get that testing is important, but what does the tape show? The tape for Jordan Davis don't show an athlete. It just doesn't, right? And so that's why I think he would slide almost out of the first round. So he's not a dynamic rusher. Pair him up with a dynamic rusher like Jeffrey Simmons, and you could have something in the interior of your defensive line. You could be wreaking havoc. So we're going to go ahead and give them Jordan Davis here. And for pick 27, the Buccaneers are on the clock, and this could have been a quarterback if Tom Brady didn't hate his kids and came out of retirement. Tom Brady retired for like 8 days and was like, I actually have to take out the trash and talk to my children. I want to go back to work. Like, he just came back. So this probably would have been a quarterback here. I know that offensive line could be a little bit of an issue. I don't know why center is one of their needs. But for me, I think what you need to do is you need to get a player who can really do a lot of different things for you, whether that's play corner or play safety, come down in the box and, try to blitz off the edge and things like that. I am going to give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Dax Hill out of Michigan. His 40 falls in line with J.C. Horn, who was a number one corner off the board last year. So the speed is definitely there. The explosiveness on tape is there, especially as a blitzer, as I mentioned, coming off the edge. He has the eyes to break on passes. He got 15 passes defended and 4 picks in 32 games. I think this guy he's one of those players that's annoying, right? That has to be annoying to play against if you're a quarterback, because he can literally do everything. And so I'm going to go ahead and give them Dax Hill, cornerback / safety / Swiss Army knife out of Michigan. So at pick 28, the Packers are on the clock here. And the Packers, in my opinion, Bernard Raymond is very tempting, the offensive tackle out of Central Michigan. But we're not going to do that. We are going to give them a receiver. George Pickens. I want to talk about George Pickens for a second. George Pickens is a first-round player, right? But George Pickens has some durability issues, right? And that's why George Pickens is not the pick here. The Packers did add Sammy Watkins, but that's not enough. Sky Moore is going to be the pick here. Sky Moore has jumped up draft boards in these last, 4 or 5 weeks, whatever. But when I watched Sky Moore, I was like, okay, Sky Moore is electric because he beats man coverage. He eats in zone coverage. He was the best receiver against zone coverage. The only thing working against him is his size and where he went to school. He's a smaller target, but he's a tackle breaking machine. And he focuses in on the small details. When you're that size, you have to be technically sound, because that's really the only way you're going to be beating people. You're not going to overpower anybody, but he's technically sound. He focuses in on the small things and the small details. And for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, that is what you want, because you're about the small details and you focus on those things as the quarterback. And so Sky Moore is going to be a Green Bay Packer here, and he's going to have 1,000 yards as a rookie, probably double-digit touchdowns or something. So the Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock, and this pick is via the 49ers. So for me, Nakobe Dean is tempting, just going off best player available. You don't need a center because you hit on Creed Humphrey, but Nakobe Dean is very tempting, but you hit on Nick Bolton last year, so you don't really need a linebacker either. If I am the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm looking at Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State, and I'm looking at David Ojabo. And David Ojabo would be the pick here, but he tore his Achilles, right? And for me, that's a scary injury for a guy who has to push off of his foot every play. Right? It's not to say you can't recover. It's just something that I would probably not be interested in. So what I would probably do is actually give them Jermaine Johnson. So Jermaine Johnson is a transfer, but he's a powerful rusher. Not like he's not finesse. He's not going to try to get around you. No, he's going to hit you in your chest, push you back on your ass. Like he's that kind of rusher. And I think for the Chiefs, I think everybody wants to panic and say that, oh, you got to get a receiver because you lost Tyreek. But no, I think Jermaine Johnson is going to be the pick here because he's a violent player. 254 pounds, wins on the edge consistently. Like I said, he transferred to FSU from Georgia, ironically. He doesn't really dip his shoulder or turn the corner well because he's not uber athletic. He's you know who he is? He's Max Crosby. That's who he is, because Max Crosby brings a lot of power. They're around the same size, and Crosby has gained the tools to become a better rusher. He has to put more things in his toolbox, and I think that can be Jermaine's ceiling down the line if he gets with the right coach. That was just based off me watching the Alabama game where he played at Georgia in 2020, the Kentucky game where he played at Georgia, and the Wake Forest game where he played at FSU. So I watched 3 or 4 games on him, and I like the player, and I think this is where he's going to be slotted in the back of the first round. So pick 30, the Chiefs are going to be back on the clock, and you know they're going to take Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson has experience at every position at wide receiver, like whether it's X or Y, wherever you want to line him up at. He can play any position on in the route tree. He can run any route in the route tree. A legit deep threat with 10 TDs, over 40 yards in his career. Nobody can beat Tyreek Hill, but this is a weapon that Patrick Mahomes would love. Get him the ball down the field, behind the line of scrimmage, across the middle, anywhere, anywhere in space. Anywhere he catches it, he can house it. And as I said, George Pickens could have been the pick around this spot of the draft, but because of his injuries, I'm going to let him slide probably to the second round, and we're going to go ahead and give the Kansas City Chiefs Jahan Dotson. So at pick 31, we're going to look at the board for a second. So technically, according to Pro Football Focus, there's Bernard Raymond, Nakobe Dean, Tyler Linderbaum, Sam Howell, David Ajabo, Lewis Seen, Kyer Elam, and Jalen Petrie. So there are a few players we can definitely weed out. We can definitely weed out anybody in the secondary, in my opinion. So Petrie, Kyer Elam, and Lewis Seen can definitely go. I'm going to weed out David Ajabo because I really believe he's going to fall to the second round. But he's going to go early second for sure. Come on. They don't need a quarterback. They don't need a linebacker, but they need offensive line. So you are looking at Bernard Raymond and Tyler Linderbaum, in my opinion. If they did not acquire La'el Collins, this would have been Bernard Raymond, in my opinion. But it's actually going to be Tyler Linderbaum. Now, a lot of people think that Linderbaum is very small. He stands 6'3", which is on par with most of the first-round centers in the last 6 drafts. But he's almost 20 pounds lighter than any of those guys that got drafted. Nick Mangold, who came out, he was 300 pounds at the combine, and that was the lightest center. Jeff Fain settled in at center for 4 years, or settled in that center for 4 teams and played center for almost a decade at 291 pounds. Of course, you hear the story of Jason Kelsey and all those things. And Linderbaum did weigh in at 303, so it looks like he got his weight up. And Cincinnati did sign Ted Karras to a 3-year deal. But I would move him back to left guard. I'm sorry, Jackson Carman. I didn't see it last year watching tape personally. So I'm moving Ted back out to left guard. And I'm going to slide in Tyler Linderbaum to be the center for the next decade because he's that kind of player. He just watching him snap the ball and just get upfield, get to the second level, hit 3 different defenders, to clear the lane. Like just he is what Joe Burrow is looking for in terms of a center. So Tyler Linderbaum is going to go there. So we get the pick 32, which is the final pick of the first round. And I mentioned Charles Cross earlier about how he had that slide to 17. And I said, well, that wouldn't be possible, right? I don't believe Bernard Raymond is going to fall out of the first round, right? I just think he's a raw prospect who played tight end for 2 years, and converted to tackle or whatever. He really improved the tackle, though. But I think a team would go up to get Bernard Raymond if he's going to fall. Maybe a team from the early second jumps up, maybe with the Tampa Bay or, with Kansas City at one of those picks to get Bernard Raymond. I would probably expect that. But for me, the Lions, they still need a linebacker. And I think that Nakobe Dean is going to be the perfect pick here. He's undersized. He has the quickness to avoid blocks and be somewhat of a loose cannon. But I took Devin Lloyd, almost 15 picks earlier because I think he's just a better overall player. Where Devin Lloyd is going to engage you, he's going to try to get off the block. Nakobe Dean's going to try to avoid you, dip under your hands and get around the edge. Like that's what Nakobe Dean's going to try to do because he's small. He has to be quick. He does well in coverage. He's able to diagnose the plays, but at times he just launches his body into linemen. And for me, that's a problem because you're not really technically sound, in my opinion. You're just a rocket who likes to hit people. And that's good, but sometimes I don't want that. Sometimes I want you to go out and cover this tight end, or sometimes I want you to blitz off the edge and win, and so he does lack length. But as I said earlier, his quickness and agility allows him to get around that, and he's a first-round player. Absolutely. But he's a late first-round player. And I think he's the second-best linebacker. So the Detroit Lions are going to select Nakobe Dean. Now, still on the board, though, is Bernard Raymond and David Ajabo and Lewis Seen and Kyer Elam and Jalen Petrie, who has some safety experience. Boye Mafe is really good. Boye Mafe might go in the first round. But the second day of the draft, early is where it's going to be fun with Ebiketie and Travis Jones and Matt Corral and things like that. So, but we're going to go ahead and give them Nakobe Dean and close out mock draft 1.0 using the Pro Football Focus simulator. So the grading of my draft, let's see if they actually show me a grade. They don't show me a grade, but that's the entire mock draft. So we start with Aidan Hutchinson and we end with Nakobe Dean. So a lot of defense. Receivers went pretty early as well. But this was fun. This is mock draft 1.0. We're not done. We're going to be back on mock draft 2.0 in a few days, and we're going to continue riding till we get to the NFL draft. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys hit that like button, that subscribe button. Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter as well. I appreciate all the support. So as always say when I wrap up, thank you for watching, and y'all be good.